Good Tevach, this is Gemara Nazir Daf Chaf Vav. We pick it up from the bottom of Chaf Heyamid Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara says, Amar Mar. We're going to go back to that which we learned yesterday, the din of Rav Yochanan. The Rav Yochanan taught us, Amar Mar halacha hi bin Nazir. It's a halacha. What does halacha always mean in the Gemara? It's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai regarding a Nazir. Meaning, it sounds like this din of Rav Yochanan that we're going to learn, that we learned yesterday, is something special only about Nazirus. That this din, that when we have money that was set aside for the karbanos of a Nazir, and one did not specify what the carbon shall be used for, the chatas, the oil, the shlamim, what's the halacha? Yiplu linidava, the money goes for nidava, voluntary offering in the Beis HaMikdash, and included in that voluntary offering in the Beis HaMikdash is going to be all the potential karbanos that could be brought. Says the Gemara, Visulaka, really? Is this a din specific to Nazir that does not apply anywhere else? Vehatanya, but we learned in a brayso v'shar chayvei kinim shebatayra, and other times when one is obligated to bring kinim. Kinim we know are a pair of birds. And as the bottom rivan that we see right here says, Shein ba'ayla v'yayred, this is referring to the different kinim, the different birds, pair that one would have to bring as a carbon ayla v'yayred. What's an ayla v'yayred? Ayla v'yayred is that when any time you have a carbon that you could potentially bring different types of carbonis. If you're an ashir, if you're an ani. So we have shar chayave kinim, says the Gemara on the top of Chavavam and Aleph, she'frishan ma'ois likineim, that someone set aside, money for the kinim, for the pair of birds. What's the halacha, says this brayso? And now let's just point out the top rivan, the mafarish on this side, that says, and what happens afterwards? Then he becomes wealthy. Kigoin. So we explain. The rivan says, mitzayra im chayav chatas vaylein im ratz loisev aleim lahavi mehen chatas behema yavi. When you have a carbon oil of yarid, you can either bring a bird or you could bring a behema, an animal. So what happens if someone set aside the money for a bird, and then what happens is he becomes wealthy man? So he wants to upgrade the carbon, and he wants to now use it for the carbon chatas of a behema. Says the brayso, Ratzi Lavim and Chatas Behema Yavi. If he wants to utilize the money to bring a Chatas Behema, he's allowed to. Oilas Behema Yavi. If he wants to use the money to bring an Oila, he could do that as well. Mace. What happens if this person dies? This should hopefully sound very familiar. This is the precise case that we're talking about, just not about a Nazir. And he wants to bring Ma'is Stumim, and he has leftover unspecified monies, and the question is, what does he do with it now? Says the brayso, Yiplu le-nidava. It goes as a nidava. It goes for communal offerings in the Beis HaMikdash, even though what was his chiyav yerachiyav chatos, and there's money left over, a stam, without specific purpose. What do you do with them? It's Yiplu le-nidava. So asks the Gemara yesterday, you Rav Yochanan said this is a din in Nazir. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that if money is left over stand by a Nazir, liplu l'nedava, even though part of it should have been al chatos, which usually cannot be brought for communal offerings afterwards. So says the Gemara, and again, what's the nikuda? What's the detail of chiddush that it's being brought for communal offerings? Is that it's going to be used for a carbon ayla, and a chatas can't become an ayla. So ask the Gemara, why does Rav Yochanan seem to indicate that this is something special about the carbon Nazir, as he taught us that it is a halach l'Moshe Sinai? We seemingly have a raya. This is even elsewhere. Answers the Gemara, the classical teretz, Tana Nazir, v'chayave Kinim the Damule. It's true. Rabbi Yochanan said this halacha about a Nazir, but it's all the karbanos that are similar to it, so it's going to include this case that we just brought of the carbon oil of Yari, the Shaive Shahar Chayave Kinim. So now ask the Gemara, Lafuke. So what's it coming to exclude? If it's coming to say not only the Nazir, but other things similar to it, obviously you're excluding something. So what are you coming to exclude? Asks the Gemara. Lafuke me'ad Tanya is learned in a brayso 5 lines down. Chavav amarale v'ishaya mechuyav chatas. Someone is obligated to bring a chatas v'amar, and he says, Harei alai oila. And he says that it is this animal, this carbon, should bring an oila. Again, why do you have to bring a chatas? Whatever its reason, whatever avera he did, he has to bring a chatas, something that b'mized will be kares b'shoyeg. He brings a chatas. And then he goes and he says this animal should be an oila. So now we have a problem. Really now he has 2 obligations. He has to bring an oila because he said he's going to bring an oila. That's a neder. And he has to bring a chatas because he's a chiyav chatas. The hifrish ma'is. And then he sets aside money. So he has an animal sitting here that he said is an oila. Then he has money that he says this should be for my chiyav. Doesn't specify, says the Brayso, excuse me, if you want, let's read it again one more time. If he wants to use the money as a chatas, he cannot. If he wants to use it as an oila, he also cannot do. And the reason here being is that in the previous case, in the case of the Shar Chayave Kinin that we spoke about, the carbon oil of Yared, he had a chatas and an oila that came from the same nikuda, the same chiyuv. Over here, he has 2 different chiyuvim. He has a chatas because of the avera he did, and he has the oila because of the neder that he said. So they can't both be utilized from the same money. Mace. Now what happens if he dies? So now we have a case, the guy is nifter and he had 2 obligations, a chatas and an oila, and there's money sitting here. The money cannot be used for the karbanos, as we just explained, because one item already has a shem oila, he now has a chiyav chatas, can't use the money. But Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi, Amar Rav Ashi, excuse me. So this, no, before we get into Rav Ashi. So this is the case that Rav Yochanan is coming to exclude. Rav Yochanan said that what is a special din by Nazir, halach l'Moshe Sinai. The Gemara today explained that it's not only by Nazir that we're going to schlep and extend the din by other karbanos, that one is obligated as well. Tana bin Nazir and all other chayave kinim that are didamula, that is similar to it. But it does not include this case because this case is not similar to it, as the karbanos that the person is obligated to bring are for different chiyuvim. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Ashi, Hada Amr, that which we keep on saying, Mefurash, money is explicit, money is stam. This takes us really back to the Mishnah on Chav Dalid. So Rav Ashi now explains, Hada Amr Mefurashin, Lai. Whenever we said that if the money is explicit, then it's not used for a carbon, that it does not, it's not Yipul in a Dava. It's not referring to a case that when one says these are mechatas oil and shlam. Ela filu amar el chatasi ulay lasi ulay shalmi mifurashin heim. Even if he doesn't say elu and elu and elu, which usually is the way to have something specific. This is the chatos, and this is the shlam, and this is the, but rather he puts it all together. That elu, the chatos, elu, and the shlamim, says Rav Ashi, that still has a status of being mefurash. Continues the Gemara, Ikad Yamri, another lashon, 6 lines to the bottom. Chavav Amar Aleph Amar Avashi Lo Yitema Damar Ilo Chatas Lo Elasi Lo Shalmi Ela Afilu Amar Ilo Chavasi Harein Kimufurash. And even if he says these are for my chiyuv and did not specify what they are, that's still called mifu rash. Says the Gemara, once we're on the topic of having excess money for karbanos, we delve a dot deeper. 3 lines from the bottom, Chavav Amar Aleph Amar Rav. That which we said that when if you have money of a carbon, that's going to be Yiplul and Adava. It goes for communal offerings, including an Ayla. And the Chiddush that we just learned a few moments ago was that even if the money was part of it, it's going to be a Chatas, you still can be Yiplul and Adava. But says the Gemara, says Rava, Naflu to me Chatas mi beinayem. If the money from the Chatas is separated from them, then Harein Kimufarashin. Then it's no longer has the status of being Ma'is Stumin. So let's let the Rivan over here talk to us 3 lines to the bottom of the Rashi words, Rivan, that Im Naflu Demechatas B'neim, Im Nevad Oy Nifrad, Kishir Demechatas B'neim. If of all the money you take out the money of the Chatos, that is Mifurash, Vashar Lo Yiplu Nedava. Avol, says the Rivan, Mevi B'damei Chatzion Oilov Demi Chatzion Shlamim B'loi Lechem. So you have a problem. Since the money from the Chatos is taken away, the excess is going to be used for what? For the Shlamim and the Oila. So as we turn over to Chavavam and Beis, says the Gemara, let's try to understand where this din of Rava is coming from. Says the Gemara, Tanya Kavasi de Rava. Chavavan Beis, I want to bring you a raya to Rava. Says the Braisa, Elu lechatasi v'ashar l'shar nizirasi. Someone says, we have a Nazir, and he has cash, and he says, these money are for my chatos, and the rest is for my nizirus. And then unfortunately, as in all the cases that we're talking about is, he's nifter, and he doesn't actually purchase all the animals. Says the Braisa, Demechatos yelchu liyama melech. You have to take out the money of the chatos, and the money of the chatos you just have to destroy. Vashar yavi chatzia la'oila v'chatzia l'shlamim. And the remainder, you have to bring half oila, half shlamim, mamish, just like Rava just taught us. Umayalin bekulam, and there's a din of mi'ilah. There's a din that if you use items for other purposes, you're over on mi'ilah. However, but it's only if you misuse all of it. They ain't me'olim mixasam, but not if you misuse only part of it. Now, what exactly is this kulan and mixasan? So again, let's pick up the Rivan in the last wide line at the top. He says, "Ma'alim bekulan b'chol hashar devashar yesh oila ba'oila yika mi'ilah." That's the nekudah that we have to remind ourselves that the din of mi'ilah, the din of misusing hektish funds, is going to be by the oila. And since there's oila mixed into these money, if you misuse all of it, you're by default misusing the oila, and therefore there's going to be a din of mi'ilah. But if you only misuse part of it, then we could say that the money that you're misusing is not an oila, but it's the shlamim money. Shlamim like a me'ilah. Lefnei zrikas dam, the din of shlamim is no me'ilah before you do the zrika. Says the Braisa further, Elu la'ila, see 5 lines down by Charlene Zirasi. So it says this money, not like before when he said this money is a chatos. Here he says this money is an oila, and the rest is for the rest of my karbanis naziris. Demei oila yaviu. You take out the demei oila yaviu oila. Umayalin bahen. V'hashar, and the rest of the money yiplin adava. And again, umayalin be'kulan. Ve'ein mayalin be'miksa. It's only going to be me'ilah by all of it and not by some of it. And again, let's look at the Rivan, in which he explains where is the me'ilah. In this case, the misusing of the hektish properties. In this case is, Ma'ilin Bekulan says Rivan, Shem Demechata Shebeneim. Just like the Oila had me'ilah, so too does the Chatas. The only thing it does not is the Shlamim. So in this case, the Oila money is that which has potential. The Chatas money has the potential me'ilah, and not the rest of it. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav lo yishanu ela ma'is. So says Rav Huna Amar Rav, we've been talking about setting aside the money for the karbanos, whether it was stam, whether it was mefurash, whether you said which money is for which. Now comes along Rav Huna Amar Rav and he says this whole conversation is ela ma'is, is only when we're talking about money or something like money to purchase the karbanos. Avol behema harehein kimifurashas. But if you have a behema, if that is set aside, and you're going to use this behema to buy the karbanos, not necessarily that this animal will be the karbanos, but rather you're going to use this animal to buy the karbanos, then harehi kimifurashas. It's as if he's specifying that which he's going to use the karban for, and therefore you're not going to be able to use it, Yiplu and Adav, you're not be able to use it for the karbanos. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, let's understand the din of Rava for a moment. The din of Rav Huna, Amar Rav, excuse me. What does that statement mean? Lo ishanu ela tamimah. This animal is tamim, it's pure, perfect, no blemishes. Aval balas mum, harehin kistuma. If the animal itself is a balas mum, then it has a din of ma'is stuma, as this animal can never actually be the carbon. Says the Gemara, one second, let's understand a bit deeper. Aval naschaloi, however, if it's a piece of metal or of silver that seemingly does not have a din that has called ma'is tam, but Rav Yitzchak Amar afilu naschal has the same din of ma'is tam, it's an equivalent of money, it will have the same din. Says the Gemara. And again, aval savar shel kairos loy. So Rav Yitzchak lowers the bar a little bit, and he says that the bar of silver will have a din of ma'is. But if it's just a pile of beams, that will not have a din of ma'is. And we conclude, Amar lei Rav Simi Barashi l'Rapapa, mai tai mayu dirabanan. What is the reasoning of the Rabbanan, the Amri ma'is, v'loi behema, v'loi nascha? Is the reason that they say it has to be specifically money, and neither an animal nor a bar of silver. Ma'is v'loi svara, money but not beams. But if that's the case, al me'ata, so Rav Simi Rashi asks Rav Papa, ma'is lo'ayifais. Why do we not say money and not birds? And you can tell me yet as to what we say. Allah Damar Rav Chisda, Rav Chisda says, Eina kinim mispar shois. Rav Chisda says, Eina kinim, the pair of birds, are not considered explicit, explained, and specified. Ella ibel kichas bailim, iba asiyas koyin, amai. What is the reason that Rav Chisda says are not, that if you have these pair of birds, it's not called mefurash when the owner or the kohen selects it? Why not? Why don't we say that the ma'is are gemirilan, that it's just like the money, and therefore the same malach l'mishinai should apply over here. They should have a regular din of money. And tomorrow we'll continue with Rav Papa's response, with his own raya, and we'll pick up from here in the next year. B'siyata d'ishmaya.